All right. It is 6 o'clock. I'd like to call the committee of the whole meeting to order on August 19th, 2025 at 6 p.m. in the committee of the whole conference room. Please stand if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Alderperson Murphy. Present. Messias.
Present.
Razak.
Present.
Simeon.
Present.
Finch. Present. McNeil.
Present.
Castro. Present. Schmidt.
Present. There is no electronic attendance tonight, so we can move to public comment. Chief Galt, do we have anyone? There is none, Your Honor. Thank you. Do we have any questions on the agenda before we get started? Hearing none, Mr. Schmidt, I will hand it off to you. We can get started.
All right, appreciate the opportunity to talk about this potential project for City Hall. I'll give kind of a brief overview, historic perspective on this project. And also elaborate how we got this. We do have a few items that we budgeted last year and this year for City Hall for one of those, as you're aware, is the control entry project on the entryway. This year we had two other bigger projects. One would be a roof replacement, and then also some HVAC upgrades as well. So whether right or wrong, I decided to kind of talk about very maybe halts or pausing those projects because we became aware of some other issues within the building as well. So in fairness to the building, some of those other challenges we kind of discovered and it's a further investigating before we move forward with other smaller projects. So I'll go through some of those challenges. We knew, so the building itself was built in 1914. There has not been a lot of major rehabilitation projects for the building since then. A lot of the materials are original to the building in the mid-century, so we knew some challenges that you probably would not see within the wall. During the controlled entry project, we assumed that there would be asbestos that we'd have to mitigate and that was confirmed. So we assumed as well if there'd be other asbestos, take care of different projects in the building. Also, because of the history of the building, we assumed that there would be lead-based paint as well, and that's disturbed, we have to mitigate that as well. For the plumbing, there's still galvanized piping, which became an issue during the controlled entry project. If you're familiar with that project, as you started to try to transition some of the piping like galvanized piping, and it just became an issue. So we're assuming again there's more galvanized piping aside from the area downstairs. The electrical components might be original to the building as well, so they're undersized and definitely need to be upgraded as well. For water, there are significant chronic water issues within the building. Several staff offices receive water when it does rain, and also the basement as well receives water as well. So there's concerns about mold, and the more mold, the more just based on the conditions of the moisture. Where we're going outside of the building, the ramp that's out there is probably not 89 that was established back in the 90s. We figured it's no longer so we know that's not all. The exterior as well is starting to deteriorate. We hairs on that facade as well. So with those maybe challenges inside and outside the building, we thought it was best to not just do the smaller projects like the HVAC, but really look at the building more holistically and try to be more inclusive of the entire area for the building. So at that point, sorry, I also wanted to mention that we're also trying to reuse the space, possibly thinking about the council chambers, moving from the second floor down to the first floor for accessibility and security reasons. So it was another component of how we have to turn over this building. And also moving the finance department to City Hall as well, for customer service purposes. And also more collaboration with the administrative staff. So because of all those challenges, we decided, me personally, to hire more of an expert who can solve the real help us dig down, figure out exactly these perceptions or assumptions were true or not. So luckily, we've been able to work with Trivers. They're an excellent firm. They're nationally known for their work in historical buildings, especially on the public side of the buildings. So I'm very lucky to work with them. They've really done a great job of figuring out those challenges exactly and determine exactly how to proceed. So we've been working with them on solutions as well, not just figuring out the problems, we need solutions as well in terms of seeing what they're inside what has to do with the building. So that's what we've been working on with Trivers the last several months. And really we're looking at not just short term but long term, how do we make the building sustainable for the next all of their needs to make sure that it's not only safe but efficient for staff and also for residents and customers actually do business within the city hall. So I know mine's more doom and gloom, but Amy is here with Trivers. She'll kind of give more of a positive, hopeful message of what we can possibly do with the building. So I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Need water because that's a lot to tell you, so voice will get scratchy. So I'm Amy Gilbertson. I'm a principal with Trivers. We have offices in St. Louis as well as Belleville, Illinois. We're really grateful that Denver selected us to tackle these issues that you're having. I hope I'll give you a really hopeful message. You have a great building and there's a lot of potential here. So I'm excited to share with you what we've been doing. So I'll give you just a brief introduction of our team. We'll talk about the project history a little bit more. Denver gave you a good look at the recent history. I'll go back a little further. We'll talk about the project goals and priorities that we set, that Moline set forward for us at the beginning of the project. I'll share a little bit more about your existing conditions, and then we'll go through what we're proposing as improvements and talk about next steps and how we might move forward. So first of all, most of you are meeting me for the first time today, and maybe haven't heard of our firm before. So as Denver said, we do work all over the country on historic buildings. My personal specialty is working with historic buildings, so I've been doing that over 20 years, and we've been fortunate to work on some of the nation's coolest historic buildings, including your old state capitol in Springfield. We are partnered with engineers who we have a long working history with, who we know can do great work, specifically in historic buildings. Interestingly, IMEG has been a partner to us for probably 20 years, but they're headquartered here in Moline. So I use them all over the country, but I was really excited to use them here for your project. RC is out of Indiana. They are a facade engineer that's really great at working with historic buildings. Farmer Environmental is in Illinois also, and they've done the abatement testing work for us, and they will be doing the abatement design. And CCS is a cost estimator out of Chicago. So it's a team we're comfortable working with and exactly who we thought could do the best on this project for you. Okay, so your project history. So originally this City Hall building started construction in 1912 as your business district was growing. So as is the case in many municipalities, this building was really important to the growth of your city from the very beginning. In the 50s, there was the addition of the jail building behind City Hall that's still there today. And also there was a kind of funny news article about gingerbread ornamentation being removed. I think something probably fell, and instead of fixing it, it was kind of the sky is falling, and they took your beautiful carpet and portico down in the 50s. Also, then in 1997, there was an elevator addition to the building. So the 90s were when the American with Disabilities Act came about. So trying to do the right thing here, you added an addition to the exterior of the building. And then in 2007, your downtown historic district was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. Obviously, we're in this room, it doesn't look the way it probably looked in 1912, so we know there were other miscellaneous interior renovations to help the workforce that's here, address security issues, lots of miscellaneous things that we're not sure exactly what the dates were. So as your city center developed, this is the downtown commercial historic district that was placed on the National Register. So you can see the border there in the bottom, and the blue square is City Hall. So it's really an anchor to this area. And its period of significance in the National Register nomination is from 1845 to 1957. So some of the things that happened in the building in the 50s are still considered significant, and so we want to address those as we're thinking about any renovations in the same way we address the things that were in 1912. So when we start outlining project goals, we're listening to the client, we're trying to figure out what it is you want to accomplish with this historic building. There's lots of opportunities with historic buildings, but we always want to start with your mission and vision. So we know we need to make financially responsible decisions. We want to deliver quality, we want efficiency, and I love that sustainability is part of your mission. So that's where we start. And then we get into the specific goals that we heard. So first, improving access and functionality of the council chambers. Right now with it on the second floor, there's security concerns. It might be more difficult for people to get there, and then it's a little bit tight for some of the meetings you might want to have there. Also, there's a desire to relocate finance into City Hall, create kind of a city administrative center. And all of the departments working here deserve efficient, modern workspace. So you all have done a great job kind of making it work. But when we look at the building holistically, we want to make sure that we're delivering modern workspaces that support what the departments here are trying to do. We also want to improve security. So now when you have council chambers on the second floor adjacent to your executive wing, there's maybe lots of people in the building at the second floor. We need sustainable long-term solutions. So talking about the roofing, the waterproofing that needs to happen on the building, replacing systems, and we also need to address the environmental hazardous materials that are in the building, especially in the basement. Obviously, the water infiltration causes mold issues, but we also do have lead and asbestos in the building as well. And then also, whenever we do a project like this, we are looking for ways that we can naturally either maintain or enhance the historic integrity of the building. So not necessarily adding scope just to add scope, but looking at these project goals and anywhere we can enhance the historic integrity of the building through this project, we want to do that. It's a building that I think a lot of people are proud of, and addressing these things can help build on that. And these are all, just so you know and aren't scared of these issues, these are all really common issues that a lot of historic buildings have, and we're able to address them. So we did meet with the departments that are planned to be in the building. We did a programming exercise with each of them, as well as talking about what they wanted out of their workspace. A lot of them mentioned being welcoming, functional, a sense of civic pride, and being able to work together efficiently. Okay, so the existing conditions, these are just some views of the building as it stands today, of course with the construction out front as well. And then these are the workspaces. So we have the executive admin suite, human resources, there's some offices adjacent to each other. You kind of have to walk through some to get to others. Council chambers is a beautiful space. Your legal area, and then finance, which is currently located in a different building. But just so you can see a little with a little more detail of the workspaces that the departments are in right now. So we also do a historic analysis of the building. So This is something we do on every historic project, and it's required on all the federal projects that we do. So we take a look at what are the most important spaces in this building in terms of its historic integrity and its purpose and its place in your history. A lot of times we're focused on where the public used to visit the building or what spaces the public was allowed in. Those are usually the spaces that have more ornate detail anyway. So those are your red zone spaces here. And what that means, we don't have to put anything back that's already gone, but those are the spaces we want to pay special attention to when we're talking about the historic integrity of the building and proceed, with caution. The yellow areas are areas that might have some significance to the building, but they have less ornate detailing, or maybe they've been modified over time. So those areas we proceed with caution, and then the green areas we can modernize in any way, shape, or form that we want to without impacting the historic integrity of the building. So before we start space planning, we do all of this, all of the existing conditions, documentation, and study, and do the historic analysis. So with our programming exercise, we know that you have about 25,000 square feet in this building. And after we met with all the departments and future cast, what space do they need now? What space do they think they'll need in 5 years? Do they need to grow or not? What we came up with was just under 25,000 square feet. So that's great. That means you have the space here that you need to support all 4 departments. But it also means we need to be really efficient. So you can imagine in a historic building, if we have this grand stair out here, we're not going to use that space for a program. So we need to look at efficiencies when we're laying out the building, but we should be able to do it. So that was kind of our starting place. Okay, so this, Denver went through a list of issues. So these are the things we were looking at in terms of our project scope when we started doing space planning and thinking about the project holistically. So of course, accessibility improvements. You do have ramps, but they do not meet current ADA standards. It's kind of, again, doing the best you could with the space you had, but we can improve on that. Public wayfinding, where you go when you enter in the building. Council chambers is upstairs. I imagine it probably takes at least your first time somebody telling you where you need to go. So working on intuitive wayfinding. Replacing systems, they are definitely at the point of your electric and systems. Moving the council chambers to the first floor. We looked at restoring the historic portico and along with creating a new accessible entry. So we need to touch the facade and the site anyway to get you the accessible entry. So we did look at restoring that historic portico and parapet, creating modern, secure, and efficient workspaces. And then also we did a full facade assessment. And so there are some repairs that are needed there. Pretty minor. The area wells need repair, and then also addressing the waterproofing. So this is like a high level list of the scope that's in the project. And then these are the preferred concept plans. So we shared a few different ideas about how we could use the building. And this is the preferred direction. So here, this is the lowest level of the building. We have to replace the area wells anyway, so we've made them larger. You already have, it's kind of like a half-level basement. There's already a lot of great natural light coming in there, but we're going to add more and do some landscaping and larger area wells. And we've got HR placed down here, as well as a large training room. Then we move up to the first floor. So you can see the main entry is there on the right side of the slide here. So this floor addresses all of the public's needs. So we have a much larger council chamber that could include some meeting space when council's not in session, plenty of room for everybody to sit. It's a much easier ingress and egress for people to come for a portion of the meeting or leave. We could stack more chairs in there if you've got a really hot topic one night, but it's much larger. And it's interesting because this is where the big finance department was when the original building was open. So the public was always invited into this area of the building. So that's what I mean when I say we can, through this project without doing anything extra and just kind of where we place this space, we can enhance the historic integrity of the building. Then off to the top in the pink, that is finance. So now when people come in to pay their bills, there's a counter set back beyond the historic opening there in the lobby. So, and we can accommodate all of the finance program on the first level. That's just the mezzanine. There's a little wellness room there. And then up on the upper level, the mayor's office has always been where the mayor's office is now. So we wanted to keep the mayor's office there. And that was one of those little red squares in the historic analysis. It's obviously a really important part of the function of the building. And it's great that it's still in the same place. So we expanded the executive admin suite around the mayor's office there in the corner. So executive admin is the purple. This space gets cut in half and becomes an executive conference room. And then we've got legal, which this used to be the courtroom when the building was originally built. So that was kind of cool too to get legal in this space. And then we've got more break room and support spaces in the lighter green. So this is an exterior rendering of what could be. And I didn't really talk on the first floor plan about, let me just go back there real quick. One of the key things that makes this plan work is we've moved your elevator inside. So right now, half of that council chamber is a hallway that has to be there because you've got an elevator on the exterior. So when I talked about doing an efficient plan, that means we need to get your circulation tighter together. And it's also better for the public to come into the building and have the elevator right there, or for your staff, frankly. So the elevator is in the gray box just to the right of the entry, next to your new accessible restroom. So then we looked at, right now, your accessible path from your parking lot to your front door is, I think, it's more than 2 football fields. It's really long because you have to come all the way around the parking lot, all the way to the center, and then up the ramp. So we've got a path that short circuits that from your parking lot. We've got a new ramp, but that's why the ramp is on the left side of the image now, also to short circuit that. And then you needed bigger landings. We've got an airlock built in right now. The hot air and the cold air just rushes into the building. So with doing the new portico and lifting the level of the landing, we get rid of the interior ramp. We address the airflow, and this does meet accessibility. And we try as often as we can to really use universal design standards. So it's a little wider ramp, a little more gracious walkways and that sort of thing. This is a rendering of the council chambers. So again, that whole space to the left of the entry after you walk in. Plenty of room for all of your seats. And then this is potentially what the garden level offices for HR could look like. So you can see you've got really big windows in there. We'd introduce a lot of glass. And so definitely can feel much different than it does right now. So in terms of addressing the project goals, we've improved access and functionality of the council chambers. We'll make sure that we've got IMEG doing audio, visual, tech, all of that. They've already met with your team here. Relocating finance and developing those efficient workspaces for all of your city departments. Improving security, so the only public space now in the building is located on the first floor, and there would be secure entry to every other place in the building. So really just keeping the public to that first floor. Addressing the waterproofing, we've already got sketches of waterproofing details in the new area wells. Also looking at creating healthy workspaces. So that's not just addressing the environmental issues, but also creating spaces that are healthy for the occupants and encourage movement, lots of natural light, that sort of thing. And then building that civic pride by enhancing the historic integrity of City Hall. So this is just a list of aligning with the project goals. Again, a couple things to note on here. We are looking at pursuing Fitwell certification, which if you haven't heard of that's a program that was developed by the CDC and GSA, which is the country's biggest landlord, to study how design can improve occupant health. And the first place they look at is the workplace because we spend like a crazy amount of our time in the workplace. So making sure we're designing using Fitwell principles as well as LEED certification. So Fitwell is good for people, LEED is good for the planet. And then again, just really capitalizing on the modernization efforts that we have to do to enhance that historic integrity. So this is the slide no one's gonna like, but this is the all-in cost estimate at this point as we've wrapped up schematic design. So it is just over $17 million. You can see that half of that is the services and systems in the building, and unfortunately, prices are higher this year than they were last year, and these prices assume a close to 11% escalation, which is what our estimator thinks is going to happen over the next year. It used to be like 2 to 3% is what we had to factor in. Now we're looking at 11. We can get drawings done in time for you to be under construction next summer. So that was best case scenario. So that's what we asked them to look at in terms of the numbers. So the envelope is about $4 million. Demo, abatement, and site is another $1 million. And then really the interiors part for your workforce is one of the smallest portions of the project. It's just getting the infrastructure and the systems ready for it. But we are always, we want to create a project that you can accomplish. So if $17 million, we always want to look at what are all the things you would love to do if you could. So we looked at everything through schematic design, but knowing that you have other things you're trying to do here and maybe all these things aren't as important as the others, we looked at big picture alternates. So what are things that we could take out of the project? Maybe it sacrifices on some of the goals, maybe it doesn't, so that we can get some scope alignment moving into the next phase of our process, which is creating the construction documents and the permit drawings. So some of the things we looked at are not doing the portico and parapet restoration, not doing as many restrooms on the first floor. If we do 6 new restrooms for while you're in council, we have to take out a vault. So that's expensive. Because the vaults are vaults. So we can do 3 instead of 6, and that would reduce the cost a bit. We do have some scope in there right now. The Sally Port has a portion of it that's not in good shape, so we were going to take that off. We could leave that alone for now. That could be a future project. The lower level and second level of the city jail building are not necessary to meet the program requirements that were outlined by the departments. So we could just do the first floor of that building. And then we do have in our project solar panels on the roof that are a little over $1 million. So you could choose to do those or not do those. And in our next phase, we'd be looking at helping you outline payback and all that sort of thing to see if that makes sense. So that this would help us align a scope that we can move forward with. But as we design, then we'll start looking at alternates for small things. So our project will include alternates. So when you go to competitive bid, you can choose which alternates you want to add, or some of them are deduct alternates so that you can buy a project. In terms of schedule, this is where we are. So back in May, we did all of our existing conditions, and then we've been in the early design phases, concept and schematic design. Here we are at council meeting. Sorry, I shouldn't say approval. We're not asking for approval. We're just sharing today. And then the next phase would be the last phase of design. So it's going to take us about 6 months to get from where we are in the drawings now to a completed set of bid documents that you put out on the street. So we could be under construction next summer. So we do this project for lots of similar projects for lots of public clients, and there's a common question of, should we just build a new building? This building's old and we need to spend $8 million on the systems. So we did look at that analysis for you. Assuming this renovation is around $17 million, assuming a little over 12 months of construction, you can be in this building in September 2027, fully renovated. If we look at that compared to constructing something new, you would have site improvements. You'd still have a substantial construction cost because new construction is also higher these days versus renovation. You still need more materials. So you'd be looking at about $18 million plus if there might be land costs. I don't know if you have the land or if you need to buy the land. And then best case scenario, because you'd be kind of starting from scratch, looking for land, hiring a design team, designing something. Best case, you'd be looking at about March 2029 by the time you get through that process. So a couple of years later. Also, we always want to share this, especially with communities that are interested in sustainability, as you all are. Renovating this building, this is a study for this specific building, you will use 80% less embodied carbon compared to building a new building. So just for some context, it would take over 43,000 trees a full year to sequester that much carbon. So renovating buildings is a really important thing that we all need to be focused on versus building new as we move into the next few decades. So our team recommends moving forward with the renovation. We can achieve all of your primary goals. We've got a project that aligns with your mission and vision. We're going to maintain viability of this landmark building. If the city center isn't here, what would be? We can get the desired schedule for getting finance over here by September 2027. We create an administrative city center, and again, we're using far less embodied carbon compared to building new. And again, as we move through the design process, we know these are taxpayer dollars. We are continuously looking at ways to save money, to still deliver on the priorities and the project goals, but looking at the most cost-effective ways to do that. So this is the last slide. Thanks for hanging with me. But if we were to move forward, we would begin we would select from the big scope alternates which portion of the project you want to move forward with, and then we'd start our construction documents. In the month of September, we would like to take the project to the Historic Commission and share it with them. I'll add a lot more information about how the building will be impacted by the project in terms of its historic integrity. We'll meet with the Illinois State Historic Preservation Office. We'll meet with each department to figure out all their small needs and fully design their spaces. And then we'll also look at whether or not there are grant funding opportunities that might support this project. And we'll look to complete our construction documents in March.
Thank you very much for that. I will mention, I got a preview of this earlier this week, and I asked Amy to provide things we could cut, which is where that slide came from. We've been talking about this as a $13 or $14 million project, and now it's looking more like 17. So I think being aware of the costs and sacrifices we can make. We don't need the Cadillac constantly. We need something functional. So I asked her earlier too about a possibility of, what if we didn't need HR in the basement? What if we were able to find an alternate place for them? And to just kind of get an idea of what that could save us in the project as well. And do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so our cost estimate is detailed, but it's not broken out by floor or department at this point. But the lower level is a little less than a third of your project, and our interiors cost is about $3.7 million. So my guess would be that it would save about $1 million. If you did, you might have to spend, I don't know where you're putting them, you might have to spend money elsewhere. We would still do the abatement and the waterproofing, but we wouldn't have any of the interiors finishes office build out. We also had a training center down there, which comes with AV and tech and some specialty systems too. So yeah, think about $1 million. I can get you a real number. point next week, but
I mean, the point is there is room for saving some more money as well if we really want to get down to it.
And I think if you have a good option for HR, we've already recommended to Denver that we not do the lower level and second level of the city jail, unless you all felt like, well, we're never gonna touch this building again, let's just do it all now, because it is only gonna get more expensive. So that's why we wanted to look at the whole thing, but if you have a set dollar amount that you were planning to spend, those things can go away without sacrificing the project. And the solar panels too, we could design for them. If you can decide at bidding if you want to have them installed or not.
Or we could design for them to be installed in the future, right? So without needing to upgrade anything inside.
Right.
Any questions from the council?
With the Register of Historic Places designation as it is that, would this be considered then a historic building because it was part of that whole area's application, or how does that?
Yeah, this is a contributing building within the district. So when you have a district instead of an individually listed building, every building within the boundary is named either contributing or non-contributing. So this is a contributing building, which gives it the same status as an individually listed building. It's just part of a group. So all of our designs, you do have to follow the Secretary of the Interior's standards for rehabilitation. So all of the designs that we're putting forward do that. We do that all day long, so I'm confident there. But that's the sort of thing I'll expand on with the Historic Commission and the State Historic Preservation Office too.
Andrew?
I had a question on the solar panels. Do we have an estimate of what the cost, what the offset would be? So if we, what we would save as far as the energy costs with the solar panels as
Not yet, but that would be, so that's in our next phase called design development. So with the systems and with the solar panels, we'll be looking at different options. And first cost, when you got life cycle costs and your payback and all of that, we're just not there yet.
I did have one other question, and this may be Mayor's not here and Bob is not here, so maybe for Barry. We had previously talked about like the one-stop shop for everything, then we had moved finance over to, so is that kind of concept gone now, or?
Well, the way it evolved was the availability of the community service center and what that space would accommodate, which ended up being CED and Parks and then as we looked at it, we were able to find space for financing this building.
So the people would just come in and pay their bills here, separate from like having to go over to the other area. So
Correct.
But we could, a permit could be paid for, like I paid for a permit down at Public Works before, so it doesn't have to be in finance. Is
Those
that
would
right?
be done at city services center inspections.
Right, because buildings, the code enforcement is moving to city service.
And I think we identified the biggest obstacle with the one-stop shop was the correct software more than anything else. But obviously, CSC is going to be a huge, helpful factor
Yes.
with that. See, it's
Yes, and we have to find a spot for finance eventually when the new fire station gets built. We're gonna have that building, we have to do something. So, and while the price tag is scary, what I fear is waiting, how much more expensive it will be. I've heard of projects going up like $40 million just like 3 years. It's just so unpredictable. But I do like the last slide where you wrote it down areas where we could save, and I really am very interested in any grants that we could possibly get. But I just feel like this building needs it. We need it, especially since we're going to be building the new fire station. Yeah, definitely we'll once we get we can see what we can cut costs.
well, and we have Carol with some numbers, some back of the napkin estimates on what the financing would look like. Are you able to share that a little bit?
And they're kind of rough. But, if we were to go with 20 years for a lower amount, the 13.6, that would be about $1.1 million in the payment for 20 years, and that's 4.4% interest. If we spread it out to 30 years, that would bring it down to $915,000 annually, and that would be at a 4.9% interest rate. If we took all in with that $17 million figure, again, going 20 years, that would be $1,455,000 at 4.4%, and then if we look to 30 years, it would bring it down to $1.2 million. And again, that's 4.9% interest. So it is big annual, it is more interesting.
What kind of an impact does it have on bonding capacity overall? We know we're gonna be doing the fire station, this would have to be on top of that.
When you say impact, we are a home rule community, so we have unlimited bonding capacity, but then there's the ability to pay for special projects like to come out that special, so we're doing the city fire station, central fire station. And so this would potentially take away from some of the available money, like the really for the projects that we do. And I know staff has been very aggressively trying to grants for the riverfront. But that first one was not successful for the, you're already turned around trying to, really fight with that. So it's a little bit unknown with that, and I want to do a lot of public, private partnership trying to get that riverfront moving. Certainly, in order to pay for the principal and interest payments, something. So it's going to be a matter of priorities.
That's true.
Are there any other options besides option 1 and 2, rehabilitating this building or, starting from scratch? Or are there other buildings that we own or other places in the community that we have considered looking at to kind of save on the costs?
Well, maybe Amy could start with the first part of that question, like if just the baseline, the 47% or the 49%, the HVAC and boiler mechanics or upgrading electrical, which probably would need to be done, whether it was no matter what we did with the building. There is literally water falling through the roof, not just to the second floor offices, but through that onto the first floor. The pictures of the basement speak for themselves. So there's significant work that needs to be done just to keep it a healthy, viable building.
Right, and part of the problem with, if you were to vacate the building, there's still maintenance, it's still city-owned property, so there's still maintenance and security issues and things like that. These are all very common questions and really good questions that you should be thinking about. I can give you an example of another client of mine that had these same questions. They debated their building sat vacant, I think, over 20 years. And then they debated what should be done with it, and are we sure this is the right thing to do here, and should these exact departments be here? And even before we had the escalation that we have now, just in normal times, escalations, the project, it took 6 years of discussion. Maybe someone would want to do something else with this building, and then the next meeting would be, well, who and what, and nobody ever stepped forward. So if you did have, at the ready, another viable use that you feel like matches the prominence of this building and supports your downtown, it's certainly something to consider. But it's still, the workplace renovation is probably not as expensive as a residential conversion or something like that. And it also, you can do a residential conversion in a historic city hall building, but you would be doing some irreversible damage with pipes and plumbing and all that sort of thing too. So it's all good things to talk through and make sure you want to keep your city center here. But just from my past experience, people usually end up keeping their city center here and many years talking about what else.
I would, it's just a thought too, a thought experiment. When we talk about relocating or looking at other buildings, we have prime examples in Moline of government property that has sat vacant for 20 years. I'm thinking of the library and the old post office that we were waiting for someone to use. And the city over in Rock Island, we have the old courthouse that sat vacant for so long and had to be torn down. And I would not want that to happen to this building. So as we think about alternatives and options, I want to keep in mind that those are real things that have happened. Amy, you've mentioned you've worked with cities that, or government buildings that they wanted to find an alternative use for, but no one would invest. And these are big buildings that are hard to work with.
Yeah, everyone always thinks hotel or apartments, but then just the numbers don't necessarily pencil out. So, sometimes they do, but
If I may, well, the second part of your question about other buildings. You don't ever know when something might present itself. You know, months before the Bethany building became available, we didn't know that was an option. So sometimes things do come up. So we can continue to, you know, evaluate what might come in. And I think another variable to this building, I want to talk about the River's Edge program a little bit, because it does introduce a little bit more of a positive spin on private sector use of this building, to the degree that it may be an option if you wanted to mention what that new program does.
Well, yeah, and there's a building in the historic district for the River Edge redevelopment zone, which we have that designation. You just have to go through the application process with the state, define all the incentives and finish that process. But with that, key things like the historic tax credit. So it would not be, we get to jump into a set aside of historic tax credit that comes up to 25% of the building cost. We're going to have to compete. So that's a very advantageous program that will automatically be able to qualify the project and the automatically be able to take part of it. So you're right. I mean, residential conversion, something like this, you got to look at the sort of building reconfiguration that you're really going to be able to get out of it. You get that large of a project, but River Edge is a significant tool to recover. It's predicted sort of cost, which would make structures like this more attractive. The level of feasibility, I don't know, it would be more attractive.
Well, thank you for this comprehensive look at what City Hall can do. Just to follow up on what a couple of our fellow colleagues have discussed this. So when we looked at Plan A being 17 million, maybe Plan B 15 million, Plan C 18 million if we were to build new. But it's possible, and just so that we have all of the information, that there's another opportunity presents itself as a Plan D than an existing building. And I'm not saying I necessarily want to go that route, just interested in at what cost. And so we have that information. Then in regards to historic grants, I'm glad that you shared it's not just a historic district, this is an anchor of the historic district. Like, what's the probability or possibility of maybe what the grants might be to support this project?
Well, we haven't really looked specifically into this project. I can tell you some that used on other projects. And when I say these, I don't know if municipalities can use them or not, but there's a Saving America's Treasures grant that can apply to historic buildings. They would probably be very interested in the portion of the project. It's a matching grant where the owner pays 50% and they match it with another 50%. So that one's been really successful. The historic tax credits, you are contributing to building in a district, but I don't think government and nonprofits can take advantage of historic tax credits now, but I don't think government entities
Yeah, so that wouldn't apply to what we can do.
But, yeah, what
That's
we
what the
can do,
private
yeah,
market can do,
yeah.
because we're not a
And,
test.
right, and then currently there's still energy efficiency grants and things like that too, so I think those two buckets would be good things to pursue and look at.
I think it's important to recognize that we're talking about that contingency, we're talking about losing control. If we're to give it or sell it to a private partner, they could turn around and demolish it if the costs did not happen. And that would be a possible consequence of that. We would have to be able to sleep with it if we want.
And then, do we have costs, or could we have costs if we considered another viable use for the building, like the work that needs to be done?
I think it would be similar. Because, and maybe, it depends on what the use is, but if it's gonna be coming off this building, it'd be about the same. But residential might be a little higher, because you've got a lot more partitions, a lot more plumbing, but you'd be in the same line, and honestly, probably more, because it's not gonna be ready next summer. So the prices that we're giving you are next summer, because we're already through the schematic design and we can jump in and finish our permit drawings in 6 months. If you start over with another viable use and looking for someone to take that on, it could be a couple of years.
I think that City Hall, like so many of our buildings, a lot of things we've encountered in these last 2 years, it's been neglected. This can has been kicked down the road so much. I mean, this is feeling like the third or fourth shoe that dropped when we had that first meeting about City Hall and the fire station 3 or 4 years ago. And I would love to see us, going all out and going to where we are to restore the building and hopefully set it up so that we don't have to do any investment for a long time. I mean, we all know, you can see the problems, and of course, we go downstairs, it's very more clear. But it's also really hard to not feel like this is the whole riverfront plan. Because on top of South Slope and the fire station and City Hall and riverfront, it's an awful lot to be handling at once. But also every minute we wait is gonna push us back. But if we wait on the park gets more expensive. Wait on this gets more expensive. I mean, it's a lot of balancing, and I think, Carol, you have to sharpen some pencils for us. And there's other pieces like the portico. I love the portico, but I am gonna have a really hard time putting $1.8 million into that.
It's also, the 1.8 includes the whole parapet too, so.
Yeah.
And well, and
But still the same issue.
I would
But
love to see
I just
it.
wanted you to know the 1.8, it is the parapet all the way around the building
Sure.
also, which was taken off.
And it is, I'd love to see it. It looks amazing. And I think we just have to make that. We're gonna have to make those decisions and push that through. I would also wondered if we could leave the elevator where it is, and if that would make it, I recognize that means we have to let people walk through council chambers and other
Well,
times.
yeah, and from an accessibility perspective, I'm not sure. Yeah. Places that is really integral to making the whole project work, and also supports, the intuitive wayfinding and that sort of thing, and having everything you need right there.
We'd also lose an office on the second floor.
Yeah, it would cut through right now we're trying to create efficiencies and make the best use out of the dollars. And just after studying the building, I think that is a really good use out of those dollars, because you get a lot out of it. It sounds like something easy to change, but you're getting a lot of impact with those dollars.
And I think that always, like any of these, comes back to if we could put that into this, so that amount in there, we basically this is about saves and we just mess up a bunch of other things. Well, it's not worth it for that.
Exactly. Very tight.
But we can't help but throw up every little idea.
No, that's great.
Because they're not, the $1.8 million, that's an easy one thing.
Yeah.
The rest, it's like, we gotta go 100 or 200,000 at a time, it's, everyone doesn't feel like a big investment that they all have.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be figured out how to.
And if you add in, we were doing some math at the beginning of this meeting of the things that I would recommend taking out of your scope that don't sacrifice what we've heard from you all as your goals. And even if we left for now the portico and parapet, with adding HR not in there, I think we're getting down closer to the 15 million mark. And then if you were to take out solar panels and do those later, then you're at a little less than 14. And then you can design the portico parapet, you can see if you get a grant or something. And then you're getting down more into where you thought you would be. But it is important to think about too, like all these little projects that have been done here. We asked the team to stop the roof project because we were afraid we were going to put in a new roof and then we come and look at a parapet and now your roof has to be changed. So we don't want you spending money twice on the same thing. So I think it's really great for you all to look at this building holistically. It doesn't mean we have to do everything we've looked at, but we've at least considered it so that we're not saving a few dollars now and then we have to spend 3 times as much next year because we didn't address something.
And I appreciate that completeness, and I think we are at a place where it's time for us to take action, figure out what path we can move forward, but it is a very difficult place to find that, and we'll have to have a lot of conversations about where the money is going to come for actually building it.
It's not fun to deliver cost estimates these days. I can tell you that much.
And I'll mention, we were in this situation because the last time any serious work was done was in the late 50s, outside of the elevator. And we've been talking about deferred maintenance and needing a facilities plan. That isn't just this building, it's every building, it's every parking structure, it's every, fire station should have been replaced 30 years ago. Like they knew it 30 years ago, and we're not dealing with it. They knew about these problems before too. They just wanted someone else to deal with it. We have to decide if we are the council that wants to push a little bit further or do the hard work and actually get something done.
I think we have a lot on our plate and only Carol can.
There's no pressure at all there, right?
Once we innovate and spend all these dollars, what is the longevity of the building? How many years we can use it?
The building should last many more generations. But in terms of upgrading, you probably have some maintenance and some systems replacements in 20, 25 years, something like that. Not holistically, I don't know what it'll cost me in 25 years, but the 8 million is full replacement of your electrical and mechanical systems and the waterproofing and those things. Those repairs should last much longer than that, but some of the equipment will have something and we'll look at that in the next phase, how long it will last and what the first cost is and your operational cost. So your monthly utility bills, things like that should be lower as well.
So, and this is more for staff. When you see like the water coming in the building, when it's hot in here sometimes, and we have to wait till there's a certain date, set the air conditioning on, or right? Okay, what does that do to staff morale, also in retaining stuff like that?
Definitely happening. We want to provide a space where people want to come work.
And I think people want to work in places that are nice and not falling apart. And I mean, there's also that idea of retention and having a safe working environment, and to your point, people are going to spend most of their days, their lives, yeah. And then also even the portico, while it's a big price tag, I mean, I had no idea that was a thing before, and it makes sense now because it does look very flat. But I mean, just restoring it to its old original look, I think that's gonna bring a good sense of pride in the city as well. How much does that cost, right? I mean, so, but yeah, this is something to everybody's comfort. It's been kicked down the road. And I just fear if we wait on a lot of these things, it's just gonna get much more expensive. But yeah, wherever we can do analysis, there might be some stuff that
Yeah, of
might be
course,
some
yeah.
of our staff gets really good at painting. All the stuff they've been doing at the other building, they could save on some. We could save internally on some smaller pieces of it.
Yeah, we've definitely heard that every dollar matters. I think that's really important. We do a lot of public work, we do a lot of nonprofit work, so we're used to getting creative and figuring out how to get you what you need and choosing things we can afford once we have a budget established. One thing I wanted to share with you, if I can, I shared it with the team last week. This was our featured project in our company meeting on Thursday. And so we have about 35 people, and everyone was commenting on how it's so cool that this municipality cares about historic preservation, cares about sustainability. Like those are things you all should be sharing. It's not typical that a municipality takes this kind of care with their historic buildings and pushes the envelope in terms of sustainability. So in terms of even like recruiting people to live here and that kind of thing, like it sends a big message. I think just sharing that it sent a big message to our team. They were all excited that we were from.
So just so it's said, we would vacate this building during construction. Correct. That would be.
That's the current plan.
Yeah, so that's
Not a small thing to figure out.
It's not as bad with the new building we have. Finance could stay and put. HR potentially could relocate. Who else? CED's already moving. And so it's really legal and executive, and then of course, finding a place for public meetings for about a year.
Just park the trucks outside of public work.
Yeah.
We have
It's
that too.
something we can analyze further, but generally the cost estimator thought you can do the construction faster if nobody's here and you don't have all the precautions of safe while you're doing abatement and that sort of thing. So while there is maybe a cost to moving people, we think it's a better way to go just to get it done.
How equipped are we to let a lot of people work at home to make that function too? I mean, I guess certain departments probably, I mean, finance is hard. If there are roles, we need people there. But at others, even if it's, I mean, nobody loves the idea of like having to rotate or share that space so that everybody has their time to collaborate in office, or I don't know, just I'm throwing it out.
I wasn't here during COVID, but from everything I've heard, it's figured out and handled it.
Just, I mean, because as we think about having to find a big space, well, we can downgrade that space to an extent and still have to have some meeting room space available, obviously, when people need it.
I don't know, should yeah, something yeah.
We still have some time to think.
So what are the next steps? Obviously, this is just for our consideration. We're not voting on anything. But Carol, would you suggest that we try to come up with a number for budgeting tonight? And that's really, I mean, obviously we need to adopt or approve a plan or not at a future council meeting. And that could really dictate what that is.
Well, and Barry and Bob and I, we just met this last week, and I think you may have gotten an email from Stephanie that we'd like to set up a roundtable for September. And we are going to designate that meeting only to talk about the special CIP. I introduced it and we talked about the regular infrastructure CIP. And we're going to fine tune it. We're going to try to show you several different options and then try to get them in priority order, as well as speaking with the strategic plan to make sure we're meeting all of those goals as well. We need guidance on what your priorities are and where the pieces fit, but we'll try to get some dollars so you can kind of see how it can all juggle together.
Is it possible to, for the grant person to have a list of grants that we, and the probability that we could get? I think that would help with the decision making.
So, Amy, your firm can give us, we talked, there was a service you provide for identifying grants. Is that correct?
It's not us, it's a consultant
Okay.
that we use.
So they would be able to identify potential grants for us and hand us a list. I don't know if it'd be that quick. I don't know if we could do it by that meeting.
Well, we could go some ways in that.
I could definitely get you a list of grants that other clients have used. I don't know if we can make an analysis necessarily on whether or not the city of Moline can take advantage of them, but that would help your staff get started.
Or maybe if we can see what other grants they've secured too. We're hesitant to kind of consider a number, but that's what I'm curious too. Could we get 500,000? Could we get $1 million? Right? It's because that would be huge. And I don't know that we can, because I don't know. So I'd like to see similar projects and what have been awarded to support projects like this. So at least we can understand some probability we have a shot at this.
And I like that idea you mentioned too. We don't do the parapet and the columns, but but there might be a grant that could be for it.
Yeah, so keep it in mind so we can,
Those are some of the things that, grants typically fund the fun things.
yeah.
Fun,
Yeah.
market and the basics.
Boilers.
Not asbestos.
Yeah.
You already replaced your windows, so that's a huge cost.
And I doubt we would be able to use funds for asbestos abatement on ourselves, because we offer that to the community. I don't think that would be appropriate. Yeah. Are there any other questions?
I have one. Your other projects have any engineering or construction firms that, like within the cities, come forward and maybe donated or to the projects?
On occasion with nonprofits, but not typically. Yeah, I do have one charter school client who is very resourceful, and he acts as his own GC, and then he gets like news crews to come in and paint the building. But it's a K through 12 school, so it's a little easier to recruit people to paint your walls.
If there's no other questions, we can go on again to public comment again. Chief Galt, is there any? Miscellaneous business. Remind everyone that the Trudy Appleby Vigil is this Thursday, and we've moved to Bass Street Landing to accommodate a larger crowd. So please attend if you are able to. And for me, that is it. Ms. Murphy, do you have any business?
Just a reminder, the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit happening next Tuesday at the Vibrant Arena Park. So if we get a chance, please stop by and check it out.
Thank you. Mitch? Yeah. Castro? Right.
Yes. I apologize. I just thought of this and really should have thought that give staff a warning to this question. So, I have noticed as my kids are there, we've had some significant challenges and backups on the avenue of the city around Roosevelt with the new traffic patterns. I didn't know if we have any updates on where that's going or where. It's obviously the first week they're trying to figure some stuff out, but it's been significant.
Yeah, I can tell you that, every year for the first 3 weeks, every school is a nightmare. Let's revisit it in 3 weeks and see where we're at. We'll work with the schools to try to get messaging out. I know Alderman Murphy messaged me about Hamilton, which has been a nightmare since they went to the larger, went from 150 kids to 600 in a residential neighborhood. That's the problem in Moline is the schools are all residential, outside of Roosevelt's on the avenue, but they're all residential neighborhood schools, which is back to the, 50s and 60s style. We don't have magnet schools here like they do in some of the newer communities where they're out. Like, if they would have taken over South Park Mall and moved everybody down there, that would have been perfect. But, I can tell you my entire 6 years, the police department here, it's the first 3 weeks and it usually calms down after that. So let's see what it's like in 3 weeks and then we'll maybe have to do something else. But I'm pretty confident that after the new parents figure out the traffic pattern and they realize I'm stuck here for a while, human behavior will change.
And I did see Josh was out there.
Yeah,
at the traffic box this morning and.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that'll be.
Yeah, he constantly is working on it. So.
You heard it here first. Chief Galt recommends a mega school at South Park.
I think it solves a lot of problems.
They already have a bus term.
Yeah, that's right.
Any updates from staff? Then with that, we do not have executive session, so do we have a motion to adjourn? Astro Finch, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned.